In my last Witcher 3 video, I talked about the first main quest, Kaer Morhen, and discussed how there was essentially no gameplay, it was all story and character development. In many ways, that made it easier to talk about because I didn't have to think about how gameplay factored in. Well, the next main quest, Lilac and Gooseberries, is way tougher to talk about. For one, it's actually two main quests rolled up into one, as you have to finish the Beast of White Orchard to complete this one. And for another, it acts as basically a 2 to 10 hour tutorial for the entire game, which is not easy to analyze. But I love me a challenge, so here's my quest analysis for the two main quests, Lilac and Gooseberries and the Beast of White Orchard. In Lilac and Gooseberries, Geralt and Vesemir are hot on the trail of Yennefer. Their search takes them to White Orchard, where Geralt asks around and is told that Yennefer went to a Nilfgaardian garrison a little further up the road. Once there, Geralt is told by the Nilfgaardian commander that he won't reveal Yennefer's location until Geralt kills a griffin that is stalking the area. Geralt and Vesemir take out that griffin before their efforts prove inconsequential, as Yennefer arrives in White Orchard to find Geralt rather than the other way around. The quest ends with Geralt and Yennefer reunited and riding to Vizima to meet with the Nilfgaardian Emperor when the Wild Hunt ambushes them on the road, which they narrowly escape. Now that sounds like a lot of plot, but the game doesn't dwell on any of it here. Geralt's interactions with the Nilfgaardians, his and Yennefer's emotional reunion, and the threat of the Wild Hunt, these are cataclysmic events, but they're going to get their time to shine later on in the game. Right now, Lilac and Gooseberries focuses its full effort on teaching the player how the game and the world works. Now, every game pretty much has a tutorial, but how many of them are as unobtrusive as Lilac and Gooseberries? Sure, there are pop-ups that tell you how notice boards work, or how to save the game, or how to use a terrible crossbow that this video is somehow making look like an effective weapon. But this isn't just a simple set of mechanical tutorials. Over the course of these quests, they teach you how to play the entire game. The Witcher 3 is famous for having a couple enormous open worlds littered with stuff to do, and that can be pretty overwhelming. So they ease you into it with White Orchard, which still looks pretty dense, but it's a manageable section to get your feet wet. This segment of the game is a microcosm of the entire Witcher 3 experience, and almost everything feels introduced naturally and with no fanfare. Like the notice board is located right on the main road in town, you can't miss it. And there are at least 3 side quests that are obviously marked on the most direct path to and from the garrison. And even if you are someone who main paths games, when you get to the garrison, the quest objective opens up a new main quest with a higher level requirement, which is the game quietly pushing you to do some side content. I don't think words can do justice for just how elegantly this is all introduced, but this video is just a series of words stitched together by the magic of my voice, so I gotta try. Let's start with the pacing. None of the side quests you encounter on the road are very long, they last about 10 minutes each, and they can be completed in the immediate vicinity that you find them. So it doesn't really feel out of character for Geralt to do these side excursions, which is a big problem in open world games. And the quests that are off the beaten path, well, those get picked up off the notice board, and you can't ignore them. But once the higher level Beast of White Orchard main quest gets introduced, this is likely the moment many players go into their quest log and are like, maybe I'll check out that higher level contract. So this series of quests and this area, they don't fall into that damn trap that almost every open world RPG falls into. It doesn't feel like Geralt's just stopping everything to do some random crap. And listen, I'm not absolving this game of this sin entirely. After this quest, when you go to Velen, The Witcher 3 becomes a huge offender of this crime. But I'm not analyzing the entire game, am I? I'm analyzing this quest. And I think it does a wonderful job at tutorializing the entire game without you realizing you're even in a tutorial. Like, you can learn about treasure hunts and Witcher gear quests just by following some clues that are laid out near your most obvious path to the main objectives. And actually doing the Beast of White Orchard quest teaches you some fundamentals as well. You learn to be best friends with your Witcher senses, and you learn about the importance of oils and bombs. It's just unfortunate that when it comes to the actual gameplay and the fight with the Griffin, I don't think it's all that fun, especially considering it's the first real boss fight. Learning how to use art is cool, and you gotta love Geralt and Vesemir fighting side by side, but this fight falls flat. What doesn't fall flat is the writing. I love how the Griffin's presence sort of forms a narrative backbone to the entire section of the game, and Geralt's descriptions of Griffin, it takes what could be a generic video game monster and gives it some pathos.
Female. Larvae in her wounds have already hatched. Been dead at least a week. Other Griffin must be a male.
And with the conversation system, we're introduced to Axii, which could have been like a dialogue easy mode, but the writing cleverly subverts this.
Raven-haired woman dressed in black and white. Seen her? Talk.
Folks say the lady rode through the village a few days back. Could have gone anywhere. Oi, people! The freak's taken Micah's mind!
And I'll take your tongue if you don't shut up.
And we get our first taste of a time decision.
It's yours, this gold. I would not want you to say you were inadequately compensated.
Now I mentioned that Lilac and Gooseberries and the Beasts of White Orchard are relatively sparse on character development, and that's true to some extent. The main characters like Geralt and Yennefer really aren't highlighted here, but there is still a lot of character work here. It's just focused on really minor characters, like the guy who gave you that time decision, Captain Peter Sar Gwynlev. This is probably the first Nilfgaardian you encounter. Now, we'd heard so much about the atrocities of Nilfgaard to this point in the game, and he is our first look at what these people are actually like.
Look at my hands. Look. See the calluses? These are not the hands of an excellency, but of a farmer. So we speak peasant to peasant. How much can you give?
This is very different than what the player has been led to believe about the Nilfgaardians. This guy seems reasonable and empathetic, and he actually negotiates for less grain than what the farmer offers. So immediately we realize this is not a black and white situation. But of course, it would be too simple for Gwynlev to just be a good person. He drops casual threats to Geralt, and this exchange here gives me the impression that his empathetic showing before was because he likes others to think him gracious.
Why do you care about this griffin?
Because I care about people.
Now, one thing that making YouTube videos and caring about people has in common is that they both require you to show and not tell. And based on what I just saw here, Gwynlev would suck at making videos. But he definitely doesn't suck at meting out harsh punishments.
You take me for a blind man or a fool? This grain is rotten. For the delivery of defective goods, 15 lashes with a knout. Make it so.
No, no, no! By the gods, no!
So, is Gwynlev good or evil? Well, it's likely neither. He's probably somewhere in between in that nice gray area we call human. And that's the thing, even for these really minor characters like Gwynlev, Tamira, and Mislav, CD Projekt imbues them with such humanity. Tamira is just an herbalist that you go to for some buckthorn, but she immediately exudes charisma and charm.
Bad time.
Not at all. Hand me the beggar tickets, the red bloom. Well, well, one versed in herbs.
And having Geralt be able to relate to her does wonders in making her feel like a real person.
Do you know the Temple of Melitele in Alanda?
Do I know it? Can't remember how many times I've been there, how many times Mother Neneka stitched me up.
We must have missed each other. I started to become a healer under Mother Neneka.
Tamara is a character you talk to for like 5 minutes total in this game, and I freaking love her. And this goes for Mislav the Hunter as well.
Before they drove me from the village.
What did you do?
Nothing. I'm a freak.
I'm a freak too.
Aye, but of another kind.
If it's lycanthropy, I can help. It's usually a simple curse
The
that...
Lord's son, Florian, and I, we loved each other.
There's so much feeling and emotion in this brief exchange of dialogue, and it's great world building. We see how the continent is as bigoted as our actual world, and Geralt referring to himself as a freak is key because bigotry towards witchers is pervasive in this quest.
I'll not drink with Weaverlaw's freaks.
And in the beginning of the quest, all that hateful tension leads to this minor dust-up, but by the end of the quest, things escalate to the point that Geralt and Vesemir are forced to kill an unruly mob.
Recognize this medallion? You know what it means. Back off.
That true. What the Emperor promise you, freaks? Your own land? Like he did the elves once?
They won't back down now.
I can see that.
So we've checked the resentment towards Witchers box, but the writing does double duty as the tensions due to the Nilfgaardian invasion are weaved in as well.
What?
Take that down before there's trouble.
That is a coat of arms, the Temerian lilies. They've a right to hang there.
This ain't Temeria no more, old man. It's Nilfgaard now.
My arse it is.
And now here's an example of why you always stay true to yourself.
What happened to the lilies?
I cannot show Temerian colours. They'll come and burn the tavern down.
Maybe it's true what they say. You fond of the Imperials? You Nilfgaard's whore? They hanged my sister, dragged her out the cloister like a dog. Said Nilfgaard's no place for superstition.
Man, that innkeep cannot win. And this is what sparks the peasants to get all riled up and leads to that bloodbath I mentioned earlier. But these people put their differences aside in their moment of abject terror in the face of an abrupt massacre. Still, it's hard to watch as our boys are rejected by both the lady who incited that vicious mob and the lady who Geralt and Vesemir stepped in to save. For me, the only bit of storytelling that falls a bit flat in this quest is the inclusion of this guy. Don't get me wrong, Gaunter O'Dimm is a fantastic character. He's the main villain of the Hearts of Stone DLC, and the dialogue between Geralt and Master Mirror is riveting.
How do you know Yennefer?
What a question. Master Dandelion's ballads, of course. The only way a humble merchant might hope to rub up against greatness. Unless, that is, he's as lucky as I am.
And runs into a very patient witcher.
Into Geralt of Rivia himself. The Butcher of Blaviken.
But whereas most people claim brilliance from CD Projekt Red for putting Gaunter O'Dimm here in the opening, I actually find it a little bit distracting. Because on first playthrough, without knowing anything, this feels like an intense conversation out of nowhere with a very important character who vanishes abruptly. And then Geralt doesn't mention or follow up on this at all until like 150 hours later when you do meet him in the DLC. I appreciate Gaunter's inclusion in the base game, but I wish it was in the middle of the main quest, not at the beginning. But that's a minor complaint. Let's finish on Geralt and Yennefer because even though their characterization is subdued in this quest, this is the heart of the quest. Their reunion, understated as it is, never fails to give me chills.
Excuses, excuses. You've not changed a bit.
Yen? How?
And when the Wild Hunt appears on the way to Vizima, it sets up the main plot wonderfully, while also being a thrilling conclusion to this quest that I can only hope that the ending of this video can approximate. What'd you guys think? Good ending? Why is no one saying anything?
As a vagrant, I deserve no explanation.
Well, that sucks. Hopefully you guys can find it in your heart to like and subscribe to this Vagrant's channel, because there's going to be a whole lot more Witcher 3 content upcoming.
Fascinating story. Any chance you're nearing the end?